well, I'm delighted to have Andrew with us today. He spent hours and hours and hours designing this workshop, this handout, and all of the handouts that you'll be using. So Andrew works in the TLC, is on faculty there, and thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. Just to give you a general orientation of what we're going to be doing today, if you look at the front of your handout, it sort of covers exactly sort of the major points in which we're going to be discussing today. About halfway through the workshop, we're going to take about a 10 to 15 minute break. Depending on how quickly we can go through this, the workshop in total will be about 2.5 to 3 hours. So we're going to break it up in the middle. And feel free, if you need to use the restroom or get up, feel free to do that on your own time. So what we're going to talk about today is Excel. And before we get into a nuts and bolts of how to use Excel, I want to talk a little bit about what is Excel? What is it? What does it do? How many people have used Excel before? How many people feel really comfortable in Excel? No? Well, good. Then I'm glad everybody's here. That's the point of this. I'm hoping that this workshop is helpful not only for people that are like an intermediate Excel user, but also for people that are beginners. But when we talk about Excel, what is Excel for those of you that have used it before? What is Excel? Why is it so ubiquitously used? Anybody? Nobody? Okay. So Excel, what is contained in an Excel spreadsheet? Data, yes. So it contains data, it holds data, it is a database. It also performs other functions. So not only does it store data, what else can you do inside of Excel? You can make visualizations, right? So you can take basic information, zeros and ones, and turn them into a better visualization of a story from data. Absolutely. So we can store data, we can visualize data, and what's the sort of the last thing you can do in Excel? You can do analysis. We can do things like averages. We can look up sums. We can do all sorts of different types of calculations. And I kind of like to think of this classical, I don't know if you can actually see that very well, but there's a classical movie back in the 1960s called The Apartment. And it was about this guy, C.C. Baxter, who worked for an insurance company, and this is what work looked like back in the 1960s. I like to give this analogy because it gives you an indication of how far we've come. This was, 20 years ago? Or 60 years ago, sorry. And each one of these individuals has a adding machine, has a telephone, and a Rolodex on his desk, right? Each one of these are sort of data points. Each one of these are basically like a single cell in an entire Excel spreadsheet. And in order to make calculations and in order to determine whether or not January's sales were different from January sales in 1962, right? These different cells had to communicate. Sometimes they had to send information from this floor to floor 76, right? We've come a really, really long way in just 60 years where we can do all of this information. We can have a building's worth of work in a single file, in a single Excel file. There's Mr. C.C. Baxter. Okay, so what we're going to go towards now is just the basic terminology of Excel. If you're comfortable with Excel, this may seem elementary, but I want you to be listening for the terms because the terms are going to be really important when it comes to the exam. You're going to need to understand like what the different components of the user interface are. Okay? So has everybody downloaded that folder from Box? If you have, close your laptop just a little bit. No, don't turn it off. Just pull it down for me. So it's really important that everybody has that folder downloaded. No? Anybody not have it downloaded? Okay. Once you have it downloaded, it should have 4 files. You guys see these 4 files? Yeah? I want you to open up examples. And then we're just going to create a blank file. So we go to File, New. And we've got ourselves a new Excel document. Okay, in the cell, we've got 2 things. We've got a worksheet and a workbook. An Excel file is called a workbook. An Excel, inside a workbook, you can have multiple worksheets. And you can navigate, you can create multiple worksheets by looking down here at the bottom left. I'm going to rename this sheet number 1 and call it Contacts. And I can create another one by clicking this plus button here. Okay? So I want everybody to have a new Excel workbook open and have 2 worksheets created, renaming the first one to Contacts. And we're going to save it, and we'll call this Contacts. Perfect. Okay, a little bit of information about the actual interface of Excel. We've got a couple of things. We've got the Quick Access toolbar up here at the top left. The Quick Access toolbar is going to give us access to things like save, undo, redo. You can also add things to it by clicking this down arrow here. And I'm going to click Open. Notice that it puts a new icon up there for me. As you get more comfortable with Excel, as you start going through classes in Excel, I would recommend you customize this to however your workflow works best. So this is the Quick Access toolbar. Below it is this long horizontal bar. That's called the ribbon. Within the ribbon, it has a couple of different headers. We've got the main one is Home, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, Data. Obviously, in 2.5 hours, 3 hours, we're not going to be able to cover everything that's in each one of these options, but I do encourage you to explore and play around with this on your own time. And on that note, you're not going to be able to be an expert at Excel by just taking this 2.5 hour workshop. My recommendation would be to learn what you can today, and then take the exercises that I have in this worksheet and work through them this weekend or maybe at the beginning of next week, and just practice, right? You're not going to be able to go be a baseball player and hit home runs without taking batting practice. The same thing with Excel. You've got to just practice. You've got to play with it in order to be comfortable. Okay, so back to the Quick Access ribbon. Below that, we've got the name box. So this name box is going to give us an indication on what cell or range we are highlighted on. So in this case, we are highlighted on A1, the cell A1. So in our name box, it's reflected A1. If we want to change that, we can go to C1 and it changes. So that's the name box. Then we also have the formula bar up here. This is where we're going to input data. This is where we'll also put functions and formulas. We're not quite there yet. And then wherever our green box is, that's our active cell. So if I ever say active cell, it's wherever we click. And we can navigate our active cell by clicking on a different cell. Or we can use the arrows. So we can go left, right, up, down, left, right. We can also use tab. Tab will go across columns. And enter will go down rows. Those things are very, very helpful. Okay. Underneath that, we've got our worksheet navigator. And then we also have some visualization options down here. And we'll talk about these once we get to the printing section of the workshop. We can zoom in and out. And we can change the print, what our spreadsheet is going to look like when we print it. And then finally, we have a status down here, which will give us an indication whether or not our Excel file is thinking. And it may actually do that while in our workshop today because we've got a file that's got a lot of data in it. Okay, any questions about sort of the user interface? No, you guys good? Okay, so let's put in enter some data, right? Excel is a database at its very root, right? It is just a place where data can go. So let's create a spreadsheet that has a column called name. Actually, before we do that, yeah, let's put name, birthday, our favorite menu item, at D Hall, and but do Excel scale of familiarity. Okay, what do we notice? What happened here in C? Why do we only see favorite? What happened? It's too long, right? There's a couple ways that we can fix that. We can either double click on the columns, in between the columns. That's going to automatically resize the width of that column. Or we can select the row and go to text wrap. And that's going to make the row larger so that we can see the entire contents. Okay? I prefer just to double click here. Okay. And then from inside of here, let's put in Andrew. Dessert. And I know Excel pretty good. Okay, note again that you can navigate to these different areas using return, tab, arrow keys, and clicking. Okay, everybody got that? Yeah, okay. What if I wanted to add new data down here? How would I do that? I could just put in Jane, Eric, and I could put in specific dates. But what if everybody's favorite dessert, everybody's favorite D Hall item is dessert? What is an easy way in which I can copy these down?
You can click that little dot in that rectangle.
Yep, you see, everybody see this dot? I'm gonna. Whoa, hello. Here we go. See this dot right here? So if I double click this, it's automatically going to copy it down for me. That is a very, very handy trick. What that does is basically does Control C, which is copy. And if I want to copy this down, I can hold down the Shift button and click the bottom row that I want to copy it into, and then paste it. Let's do that So there's two ways of copy and pasting. You can either double click this green icon or this green dot, or we can copy and paste. It's good to know how to do both of those things. Yeah. If you don't have a green dot, yes, you could also drag it down. Like you could, if I had 10 here. Well, so if you drag down, yeah, you can drag down. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Another thing I want to show you is that if we have, say we have person ID. So this field is just going to be, I want each one of my contacts to have a unique identifier. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Instead of having to write in this value, what I can do is I can do something that's called autofill. If I highlight both of these, 1, 2, and drag down, it's going to automatically, it's saying, hey, this is a numbered list, 1, 2, and if I drag it down, it's going to just give me 3. And again, if I keep going, it's just going to do that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, if I wanted to do something different, maybe I wanted the sort of the formula to be 1, 3, and I wanted this next ID to be 5. Again, I just highlight and drag down, and it's going to follow the order in which that I put the data. Okay, that's autofill. This works for dates as well. So if I wanted to drag down a date, it's going to do some automatic calculations, but this is incrementing by 1 day, right? Okay. So from here, let's save. Again, we can either press Control S, that's a keystroke. Everybody know what a keystroke is? A keystroke is like a little shortcut. Instead of having to find the save icon here, I can just press Control S and it automatically saves. The more you know keystrokes, the simpler your life's going to be. But you can also click the save icon. If you want to undo something, does anybody know the keystroke for undo? Control Z, yep. And that's going to undo all of the things that I just did. Or you can click this undo button up here. Okay? All right. So that's our general concepts and terminology. Now let's open up the examples Excel spreadsheet from the folder that I gave you. Everybody got it open for me? Yeah? Okay. All right, what is this data? Anybody tell me what this data is? Yes.
It's data about employees and their hire dates, benefits, salaries.
Okay, so it's kind of like an HR spreadsheet, right? It's got data about the employees at a specific company. It's got salary information. Notice that the data is organized so that our variables are in rows. Our variables are in columns, and our values are in rows. Okay, so each individual is a row. Each variable is a column. Okay, say what we want to do with this. Say you've been tasked in your job to create some summaries of this data. They want you to do some filtering, some sorting. Remember, with Excel, you can not only store the data here, but you can also manage the data. And so what we want to do here is we want to learn how to sort data, filter data, and do some manipulations to a data table. One of the easier ways of filtering and sorting is by highlighting, a table. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on column A. We click on column A and drag over to column J. That's going to highlight my entire table. Everybody got that? Okay. What I want to do is I want to insert. All right, something's not right here. Yep. Okay. My Excel's frozen. Don't do this. Mine's just frozen. Okay. So we're going to highlight this. Again, another way to auto width your columns is you can highlight all of these columns and double click. That makes it so that we can see all of the data. That's good. Go to Insert. We're going to create a table. It's going to say, where is the data for your table? We've already highlighted it, so we don't need to put any information in here. And it says, does my table have headers? Do we have headers in this table? Yes, what are they? Yeah, the first row, exactly. So that's going to create a header. Okay, what that does is it creates these headers in which we can sort. So we can look at information on specific columns. Say what we want to do is we want to sort by hire date. We want to see the oldest employees first. So we click this down arrow on hire date and click sort oldest to newest. And Zachary Tate was our first employee hired in January 6, 1994. We want to go the opposite direction, descending. We can do sort newest to oldest, and we can see our newest employee is Karen Garcia, December 19th, 2012. Okay, that's how you sort. So another way to sort too, if you go to data, the data tab in the ribbon, there's a sorting options up here. It's much cleaner. The tables are always going to look nicer if you make your data into a Excel table. Okay. Okay, now what we want to do, let's say your boss has come to you and they want you to pull up a report about the employees that are in the IT department. Anybody know what would we do if I wanted to make a table that only showed employees from the IT department? Any ideas? Click down on what? On department? Is that what you said? Yeah? Okay. And then I can look for IT here. Before I do that, I want to unselect them all and then scroll down to IT. Again, we're chugging along here. There we go. Now we're only seeing rows, employees that work in the IT department. Okay. Now let's say we want to have a little bit more of a sophisticated report here. Now what we want to see, we want a table that filters for employees that are only in the IT department, but who make more than $50,000. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into that salary column and go to number filters. And it gives us the opportunity to create a calculation. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to, what did I say? We wanted to filter that filters only for employees that make more than 50,000. So we're going to do is greater than 50,000. Click OK. Wait a few seconds. Perfect. Now let's sort by salary. So we're going to the largest to smallest. Okay, so we sorted, we filtered for IT, we filtered for salaries based on ones that were higher than 50,000, and then we sorted the table by salary. Okay? Everybody got that? Okay. Anybody have any questions about that? You guys good?
I have more people past Laura Rogers.
You have more people past.
Was 724 the last one you
Let me see. Are they in the IT department and they make more than 50,000?
No, they do not.
So your filter, that filter's on. This is a glitch. This is a glitch. Like this is not real data. Yeah. See how you can select it.
Are you on a? Who's the other person who saw that?
Yeah, it's a glitch.
Okay, so we filtered, we've sorted. Now, one of the things I want you to show you is that we can name ranges. What is a range? Anybody know? We've talked about what a cell is. What is a cell? A cell is just one of these, right? A range is when I select J, or if I select I through J. Okay? We can name these ranges by, say we think that building and department is a good, we want to call this range location. We can go up to the name box up here and name it location. And if we click this down arrow, we can quickly then go back to that range, and it's going to give us that range. That's going to be really helpful down the line, but you should know that for the exam. Yeah.
When you put the name in, you don't see it anywhere yet.
Right. So it's going to still give you the value of the first cell in the range, but you can navigate to the range by clicking that down arrow. Yeah. Yes. Yep. So try that on like years and higher date. We can call that time. And again, I can go back and click on time, and it's going to give me that selected range. Okay. So we can have names for both cells, and we can also have names for ranges. That's important once we get to functions and formulas. But for now, that's all we need. Okay. Let's go to this next worksheet. Right, we're in examples workbook. Now we're going to go to worksheet employees, and it's the same table that we had, but now it's not formatted, which is fine. What we want to do here is our table has a single column for name, and that column has last name and first name separated by a comma. Why would we want why would we want a column that has first name or last name independently? Why would that be useful? What did we just talk about? We just talked about sorting and filtering, right? If I wanted to sort by first name, how would I do that? I can't the way that the data is presented in this table, right? So what I instead want to do is I want to create some new columns that have last name and first name. Okay? And Excel has a built-in function that makes that pretty easy. So if I want to create a column, a blank column, next between A and B here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the B column, right-click, and click Insert. Okay, let's do that twice. So we've got two blank columns in between those, the building and employee name. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select column A and go to Data on the ribbon and click on Text to Columns. Okay, so this little Text to Columns wizard, I love how Windows calls everything wizards. Anyways, the wizard, what it's going to say is, okay, I see that you want to split some data up, but how do you want to split it up? I'm going to say it's delimited. It's delimited because what we have in between the two names is what? What do we have in between those two names? A comma. So it's delimited by not a tab, but a comma. Hey, it gives us an indication of what that's going to look like. That's cool. We'll go to next. Perfect. And then what we want to do is where do we want our destination to be? We don't want our destination to be A1 because then it's going to overwrite this column. We want our destination to be B1. So let's change that to B1 and finish. Okay, so now we have a column that has last name, first name, but we also have a column for first name and last name. And let's put some headers on here. So this is last name, and this is first name. Okay, so now if we wanted to sort by first name, we can sort by first name. Okay, anybody have any questions about that? Everybody get that? Yeah. Did you create those extra columns? Yeah. So if the destination is B1 and there's data at B1, you're going to overwrite that data. That's why we created those extra columns. Do you have a question? You got it? Okay, so that's basic data management in Excel, right? You can have a table, you can sort it, you can filter it, you can separate a single column into multiple columns based on a delimiter or a space using that text to column feature. That's data management in a nutshell. Now let's talk about formatting. Let's stay here on employees. Let's say, for whatever reason, when you make a table, I don't know if you noticed, but when you make a table like this one, it consumes a lot of memory and it uses a lot of processing power. And so maybe you don't necessarily want to create a table, and you just want to use the built-in table functionality in Excel. There's ways in which we can make this much more attractive, so it's not just black and white, right? One of the things that we may want to do is we may want to make our header, that column, that row A, more attractive. One of the ways we can do that is we highlight that range, right? We highlight the first range, and we can do all sorts of things to the fonts within that range. So in this case, maybe let's make it bold. Let's increase the let's increase the size. Let's go up to 14 and change the font to a nice orange. Okay. We can also change the alignment, so we can, instead of being left justified, we can be center justified. And let's double click our columns again so that, oops, so that they are the correct width. Okay. That's not terrible looking, right? Okay, but what we can also do is we can format numbers. So in the instance of column J, what is the value in column J? They're dollars, right? So let's say we want to quickly format this column to reflect that they're dollars. There is this number formatter number format options up here in the ribbon, which you can do this drop down, and there's all sorts of different options. You could have fractions, percentages, time, dates, numbers. You can control decimal points. For this, we're just going to use the generic, where is it? Dollar sign right here. Okay, what that does is it adds some decimal points, it adds a comma, and it adds the dollar sign. Okay, that's very helpful. Same thing with date. So if we select the G date range, click down arrow, say we want a long date. Say we want to see what day of the week each person was hired. If we do long date, we can see that. It takes that date information and gives us even more information. Okay? So that's clicking that G column, going to date, and changing it to the long one. There are a lot of different built-in formatting for numbers. Again, I'm not going to be able to cover them all in this workshop, but I encourage you to look and see what's possible here. Okay. Say we want to get rid of the decimal places here in, is that J? We can do that by selecting that column and then just reducing the decimal places. We can also increase them or reduce them by clicking that value up there. Okay? Okay, so that's pretty basic, right? If you've ever used a word processor ever in your life, you probably know how to format text, right? But with Excel, what you can do is you can do conditional formatting. Say I'm in HR, I'm working in HR, and I look at the spreadsheet every single day, and I want to make sure that anybody that's making less than 30%, I'm keeping my eye on, okay? And I want special attention to people that are making less than $30,000. So what I want to do is I want to create a conditional formatting rule that makes my value, my cell, red if that person is making less than $30,000. Okay? To do that, we go into conditional formatting here, and we're going to create a new rule. And we want to format the cells that contain a cell value is less than, what did I say, 30,000? And then it's going to say, what do you want to format that, that cell, if this is correct. What we want to do fill. We want it to be red. And we want our text to be white. That gives us a preview of what our formatted, our conditionally formatted rule is going to look like. Let's click OK. And there we go. This gives you a really quick indication which individual makes less than $30,000. How could we sort this? Anybody remember how to sort? What? How would we sort this so that we saw lowest to highest? Yeah. Redo this, yeah. So, I'm sorry? Yeah. Okay, so highlight J, conditional formatting. In my case, manageables, because I already have one. I'm going to double click this. Go to Format, So we have font. So to change the color of the font, you go to the font tab, change it to white, then go to fill and change the color of the fill to red.
So that was a new formatting rule, right?
Yep. And you have to do format only cells that contain. No? Yeah, it may not. I wouldn't. That's why. So I encourage at the beginning of the workshop to, if you're going to use a Mac, there might be some things that are different. I can work with you after to show you how to do it on a Mac. But remember that the exam itself is going to be on a PC, so you should know how to do it on a PC. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? Now let's create a new rule. Let's create a new rule. So again, let's go to conditional formatting, manage, or new rule. Let's do cells that contain. Now we want to make a cell green if it's somebody makes more than 75,000. So you guys do that. Anybody want to run me through it? What do I click from here? Format. Okay. What? What do I click?
On the Mac, if I remember from doing it.
Okay. Greater than. On white. Okay. It's going to give us an indication. Perfect. And if I want to filter, I highlight that column, go to data, sort, and let's say we want to do lowest to highest. It's going to ask if we want to expand the selection. We do, because we don't want to just sort this column. We want to sort all of the data. And that's going to sort. Okay? Let's say we want to okay. You guys got it? No? You got it? Well, don't get behind. Oh, okay. All right. So that is formatting, right? So what we did was we would make selections, either ranges or individual cells. We could format using this home up here. We can change the font, we can change the alignment, we can change the number. And then we can also do conditional formatting like we did in the column J. Okay? That will also be on the exam, both of those concepts. Okay. Let's move on. Is it okay if I move on? Yeah? You guys good? I know like the most fun thing in the world on a Friday afternoon is to learn Excel, right? I mean, this is exactly how you wanted to spend your Friday afternoon, right? Yeah.
So it's supposed to all turn green and not remain the...
Well, scroll down. If you properly did your rule, anything that's making less than 75,000, if you go to the bottom of the table, right, they're going to be red. Okay. All right, so let's move on to formulas and functions. If you have any questions about formatting or got lost during that last part, just make a note and we can go over it if we have time at the end. But now let's go on to formulas and functions. And that is going to be the file functions and formulas in that folder. If you double click on that. Now, whenever you download something from the internet in Excel, you're always going to get this yellow ribbon. Click Enable Editing. If you don't click that, you're not going to be able to do some of the functions inside of this Excel sheet. So make sure you do that.
Wait, to do that again?
So it was a ribbon. It doesn't show it for me anymore. I'll open one that we haven't opened yet. So see, when you open it up for the first time, you get this ribbon up here.
If you don't get it, then it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're in functions and formulas. So we've talked about how Excel can act as a database, right? It can also act as, and a database can be managed where you can sort and filter, format, all that kind of fun stuff. But in actuality, probably the biggest function of Excel is that you can create calculations, you can create functions, you can get new insights to an existing data source using formulas and functions. So what we're going to do now is we're going to manipulate this data. And let's go to formulas. So what do I mean by that? What is this data? So we're in worksheet formulas. What is this? Can anybody tell me what this data is? Just briefly. Describe it for me. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a sales sheet, right? Like we're just creating a sales sheet here. We're in the home furniture sales business. And what we want to do here is we want to create some formulas that allow us to add values to subtotal, tax, and total. What should the formula be for subtotal? Yeah. Yeah, so we want to take number of items, times it by the item's cost, and return that here. Now, let's do that. We'll go into F4 and do equals 5 times D4. Now, what happened there? This is what's known as a cell reference. So when we're creating a formula or a function in Excel, what you do is you create a cell reference. So what we did was we did equals E4, which is the reference for this cell, times D4, which is the reference for this cell. Okay? That's what we want. Perfect. So do we want that function to carry down? Oh yes. So let's double click the green arrow, the green dot, and it does that. Notice that our formatting got all messed up. Not really ideal. So let's actually do that formula again in F5. So E5 times D5, and then let's do our double click. That's going to work better. So what?
It does work up the other way, right?
What do you mean the other?
You just dragged it from 1,499 to the same value.
It does the same thing. I mean, it'll give you the right value, but you see how the formatting's different? See, they're all blue instead of being blue and white. All right, I don't want anybody to get lost here. So has everybody created this column? Yeah, has anybody not created the column? Don't be afraid to raise your hand. I want everybody to get there. You can copy and paste, just if you copy and paste the formatting, it might get messed up. Yeah, if you can copy paste the format, yeah. So this is actually an important point here. What happens if I copy and paste this formula down? It copies and pastes the reference of the cells down, right? So it's not going to just copy paste this reference. It's going to say, okay, I recognize that you want to have this reference to be relative, okay? Right? Okay, let's go to tax. What is what should our formula be for tax? So, I'm sorry? Well, we've got sales tax right here. So this is our sales tax. We want to know how much tax we should charge on our subtotal. So, well, we don't want to do 0.05. We want to reference this cell. So we do J4 times F4. Okay? Now what happens if we copy and paste that down? It's going to do all blue, but what about our values? Did it? Let's look. Let's see what our references are. It did F. It came down to F5, but what happened over here? It's J5 now. It's not J4. So what we have here, these are what's known as a relative reference, a relative cell reference. Now, this vocabulary is very important for the exam, so you really need to know the difference between a relative cell reference and what's known as a absolute cell reference. So if I want to make an absolute cell reference, which means even if I copy this to Timbuktu, I want you to stay on this cell. Does anybody know how to make an absolute cell reference, what I have to do? Yeah? So don't worry about the keystroke just yet. What you do, yeah.
Would you say that this is the same thing as anchoring?
Yes.
So couldn't you just add a dollar sign? Anchors the cell.
So the dollar sign is what makes an absolute cell reference. The correct terminology is an absolute cell reference. And what that does, so to do that, what we do is we make a dollar sign we want the row to be absolute, so we put a dollar sign there before that 4. So instead of F4, now it's F $4. So now if we copy that down,
Why in front of F, not J?
I'm sorry, that was incorrect. It's in front of the J. I mean, it's after the J. Sorry. No. You want the other one to stay relative, right? Because you wanted to get that subtotal for each one of the rows.
And not putting that one's a relative?
Yep. So in this instance, F4 is a relative cell reference, and J4 is an absolute reference for the row. We didn't make the column reference absolute. It's still relative, but if we wanted, and you can see that by, if you copy this formula over to total, you can see that even though we put a dollar sign in front of the 4, we didn't put a dollar sign in front of the column, and sure enough, it shifted over. Okay?
Have you caught that? Drag it over?
Just copied and pasted, yeah. This is the most essential thing you can learn about Excel, is to understand the difference between relative and absolute references, okay? All right. Then what is our formula here for total? Yeah.
Number of items times subtotal plus tax.
Yeah. Well, say that again.
Number of items times subtotal plus tax.
Yep. subtotal plus DAX. And again, we want these to be relative references so that we can just copy them down. Okay. So how would you describe a formula based on what we've been doing here? You may want to give it like a definition, a shot here. The actual definition for a formula is an equation that applies mathematical operators like plus, minus, divides to a series of cell references. That's what we mean when we say a formula. How is that different from a function? Does anybody know what a function is? A function is a built-in formula that Excel has pre-programmed into the system to let you do things more quickly. And probably one of the, does anybody know what is a pretty typical built-in function in Excel?
I guess like sum.
Yeah, sum, average, count, all of those things. What does sum do?
Sum adds whatever cell you need to add.
Yeah, so in the case of total, where we said this is a sum, right? This is a F4 plus G4. That's just a sum. So we could rewrite this formula to just say sum. That's our function. Okay? We're going to put parentheses around it, and we're going to say sum these cells. And I'm going to select the range of G of F to G. Okay, do you see those the semicolon in between? And it equals. That does the exact same thing. But you can see why that would be really advantageous. Say we wanted to sum like 20 columns. I'm not going to want to put in F4, G4, H4 plus blah, 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 blah. I would rather just say sum all of these columns. That make sense? Okay. All right, I gotta catch up. All right, let's create a new column. Let's create a new column. Actually, let's not do a new column. Let's just create a field down here. Let's create average tax paid. So we want to determine what was the average amount of tax that our customers paid in these 3 to 4 days. How would we do that? Anybody want to walk me through that? We're going to use a function. Okay, yeah. So equals average. So if I just do G4, G10, yeah, so see, if I just select 2 cells, it's going to put them in between commas, and it's just going to average between those 2 cells. What we want to do is we want to select the range. So there's a couple ways that we can do that. One way is to just highlight. So just drag, click and drag. That's going to put that semicolon in between. And that's going to give us our average, so it's $50. Okay. Now I'm not going to be able to, and then maybe let's create a new column. Let's call it. On this one? Yeah. All right. So let's create a new column. So let's make one inside of here. Again, we're going to highlight column H, right click, and do insert. Let's name this one rank. So what we want to do here in this column is we want to rank each one of these sales so that the highest value is going to have a 1, and the lowest value is going to have, what, a 7? Yeah, 7. So we want this to say, to rank this amount. How would we do that? We're going to use a function, so equals. Let's just start typing rank, see what comes up. Hey, there's some options here, right? Let's just use this rank.eq. Okay. Now rank EQ, if you look at it right here, this function doesn't require just a range, but it requires 2 arguments. One, which is a number, and the other is a range, right? Because what we want to do is we want to say, for this value, where does it fall, where does it rank in this range? So we have to pass it 2 arguments. Does that make sense? Okay, so we want to say this cell, I1, comma, this range, which is going to be I4 to I10. This is going to be really important once we get to some of the more sophisticated functions in just a little bit. Okay? All right, and let's do equals. Perfect. Now again, what do we need to do to be able to copy this down, or copy and paste this down? What? Yeah.
You can use an autofill.
What do you mean by autofill?
But you just click that little dot in the lower right hand corner.
What happened? Why is this ranked number 1?
Probably because you didn't set the right reference.
Yes, we have a relative reference here for our range where we should have an absolute reference. Right? What should be our absolute reference? Should it be the first argument here, I4? Should that be relative or absolute? Relative, right? Because we want that to come down the rows. It's our range that we don't want to be relative, right? We don't want this thing to keep going down. We want it to be set. So let's put our $signs before the 4 and the 10. And then let's do that. That worked. Question? So if you click on the 8th column, click on 8 and right click.
The dollar